Something interesting has started happening in my indie RTS Grovekeeper. The human enemies aren't just fighting anymore, they're starting to panic. A few years ago I played The Forest and later Sons of the Forest, and something about those games really stuck with me. It wasn't the crafting or the survival mechanics, it was the enemies. The cannibals in those games don't just run straight at you, not always anyway. They watch you, they hesitate. Sometimes they back away, and sometimes they test you. And sometimes when things are going badly for them, they just run. That instinct for self-preservation made them feel unsettlingly human. And strangely, that made them more frightening, because you weren't fighting mindless monsters anymore. You were fighting something that seemed to understand danger. And if they understand danger, then maybe they understand you. A few other games do this really well. In Fear, soldiers communicate, flank, and retreat when they're overwhelmed. In Red Dead Redemption 2, enemies sometimes surrender or try to escape if the fight turns against them. In Mountain Blade, large battles can break into chaotic routes once morale collapses. And in RimWorld, raids can fall apart when enough attackers lose confidence. When enemies care about staying alive, the whole game changes. Most RTS games don't really do this. Enemies just path towards the player, relentlessly, fighting to the death. Which works mechanically, but it doesn't always feel believable. So recently, I've been working on something called the resolve system. Instead of fighting endlessly, human enemies in Grovekeeper now react emotionally to the battlefield. If enough of their allies fall, if something powerful appears, or if they're clearly outnumbered, their resolve can break. And when that happens, they scream, they panic, and they run. The result is really interesting. Now when you're stomping through woodcutters with your giant leshies, they don't just throw themselves under your feet. They stop, turn around and run, as you would. I think it's important to make the enemies in Grovekeeper feel particularly human, because the player is distinctly non-human, and that contrast is important. Not to mention it's fun. Hearing a logger scream, "Oh my God!" as their best friend gets launched into the air by one of your units just adds a certain level of satisfaction. This also had the bonus effect of pushing the enemies into all sorts of strange parts of the map, meaning that their usual lanes that they develop get disrupted and encounters can happen all over the place. When enemies value their survival, every encounter becomes more dynamic and more unpredictable. But once the humans started behaving more intelligently, something else became clear. If humans were going to invade the forest, they probably wouldn't send endless waves of identical soldiers. They would send leaders. Lords. So I've started introducing something called the Lords of the Land. Each level now features a powerful human leader, a figure who represents the peak of the invading force. The name Lords of the Land actually comes from Dungeon Keeper.
Beware, the Lord of the Land approaches.
Which I played a lot when I was growing up. In that game, powerful human lords would show up to challenge your dungeon. I always liked how their arrival changed the feeling of a level. Suddenly you weren't just dealing with generic enemies anymore. It felt like the world was responding to you. That's the same role that the lords play in Grovekeeper. The first of these leaders is called the Rat, which is a reference to Stronghold, another awesome game I played while I was growing up. Stronghold featured a series of rival lords named after animals like the rat,
Ratty wins again! Ratty wins again!
the snake, the pig, the wolf, each with their own personality and approach. Giving opponents an identity like this makes conflicts feel more personal and more memorable.
A message from the rat.
You impudent upstart!
It also makes victories more satisfying. In Grovekeeper, each lord changes the dynamic of the battle. They're stronger, more resilient, surrounded by loyal followers. And importantly, they influence the resolve of nearby soldiers. When a lord enters the battlefield, human forces become more confident. But when a lord falls, that confidence can shatter. Suddenly, the battle isn't just about defeating units, it's about breaking an army's will to fight. As these systems started coming together, something interesting began to happen. Grovekeeper started to feel more cohesive, more grounded, more fun. One thing players have consistently responded positively to is the music. The tracks we've been using so far are fantastic, and they've helped shape the vibe of the game. At the moment, most of that music comes from artlist.io, which has been incredibly useful during development. But one of the challenges with licensed music is that if a streamer or a YouTuber plays the game, their videos can sometimes get flagged for copyright. And that's obviously something we want to avoid, because we want to get this game in front of streamers. So we've recently commissioned an original musical theme for Grovekeeper from a Sydney-based musician called Sam. Sam's awesome and he's been doing a really good job. It's a short piece, around 2 minutes, designed to capture the tone of the world, and it gives publishers and potential investors a sense of what the final soundtrack could sound like. So far we're loving the sound. Having music written specifically for the game makes a huge difference. It helps us define the emotional identity of the game. Alongside these bigger additions, we've also been pushing hard towards a vertical slice, a small section of the game that represents the full experience. The current demo now includes 2 complete levels, 2 Lords of the Land, and all 4 seasonal variations which affect difficulty and rewards experience and Magin for attempting harder runs. One of the bigger structural additions is the upgrade system. After completing or even losing a level, the player returns to the overworld with the Magin or money they've earned. That Magin can be used to upgrade units, unlock advantages, and approach the next attempt with a stronger strategy. This introduces a roguelite structure where each run helps you prepare for the next. A lot of recent work has focused on clarity and responsiveness. We've added new UI, sound effects, updated the blood and combat feedback. We improved unit movement with procedural leg animation and IK, so Guardians adapt more naturally to uneven terrain. Small details, but together they help the game feel more complete and professional. We've also re-implemented several RTS conventions that players expect, including control groups and attack move functionality. These systems don't always stand out individually, but they make the game feel far more intuitive to play. The in-game glossary has been updated to reflect the newest systems, units, and mechanics, making it easier for new players to understand how everything fits together. And one system I'm particularly excited about is something we're calling the DOP system, or the Director of Photography. This is a dynamic camera system that intelligently finds cinematic angles during important moments. It can frame dramatic shots when a lord enters the level, capture kill cam moments, or highlight key events like an iron mine appearing on the map. It navigates using the nav mesh and terrain data to avoid clipping through the environment. And all round, I'm pretty proud of this. I think it was quite an interesting way to solve the problem of having dynamic camera shots. None of these changes dramatically alter the core mechanics on their own, but together they help the game feel more alive, more intentional, and more believable. At this point, the biggest challenge isn't adding more features, it's understanding how the game actually feels to play, for someone seeing it for the first time. After working on Grovekeeper for almost 3 years, I've played it thousands of times. I know where enemies appear, I know which upgrades are the strongest, I know which strategies are safe and which ones are risky. I'm quite literally the best player of this game on the planet, which is not actually very helpful for when it comes to balancing difficulty. Right now we're trying to understand a few key things. Is the overall difficulty in the right place? Does the tutorial teach the game effectively without being frustrating or boring? And does the economy feel satisfying? Or is it too easy to snowball towards victory once you get your bearings? These are the kinds of things that become almost impossible to judge when you've been living inside the game for years. Fresh eyes make an enormous difference. To help with this, we've added anonymous analytics tools to give us a clearer picture of how players interact with the demo. Things like which levels are played, how far players progress, what resources they accumulate, which perks they choose, and where players tend to succeed or where they might struggle. All of this data is completely anonymous, but if you do play the demo, you will be agreeing for us to collect this data. The goal isn't a full release yet. We're currently working towards a public demo later this year. This vertical slice represents the foundation of that experience. So if you'd like to help shape the balance of Grovekeeper, you can join the Discord using the link below. There's a channel in there called Playtesting, so go and introduce yourselves, and very soon we're going to have a new playtesting demo for you to be able to give us feedback on. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. It's been an absolute blast the last few months working on the game almost full time. We're making a lot of great headway. We're really excited to show you all the new things that are happening, so please like, subscribe, wishlist, all of those things. Please, it really helps us. Peace, love you.
Go and shut the lights out, pipe down, I don't care what's next, I need it right now. And I got the numbers going stupid like they dropped out. What they think they doing, I don't know, but we can find out. Feel like Lewis Hamilton said, go and shut the lights out.